Oh man, that was so funny, Melissa. Like, Melissa just brought it to my attention, guys. I've had, in your words, a disgusting beast as an avatar on Discord for like the last, I don't know, 6 months or something. I went to an AI image generator and I must have typed in like a monster is playing poker or something like that. And it generated this like, I don't even know what it is. Yeah, it's got like 9 hands and loads of eyes. It just looks like a monstrosity.
It's a nightmare. It's a total nightmare.
The stuff of nightmares. Yeah, it's really bad. And then you said, what really cracked me up is you just said you're responding really rationally to people on hand history threads in our Discord server, and it's just this disgusting beast being really rational. It's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe at some point change it to something. I liked it when it was like that carrot guy with the flowing robe thing, like the Roman. You
Yeah,
had that's when I first came on the Discord, that's what it was. And I thought, oh, okay, this guy's legit.
that's
I
appropriate. Like
saw
I've joined the right place.
that's
Not
appropriate,
not like
right?
I've spent. What's the new full scholarship going to be that includes the exploitative course gradient? It's going to be £12.99, like £1,299,
Uh-huh.
$1,500. Someone spends like $1,500, and the first thing they see is like some trolling guy with a
Yeah.
disgusting monster avatar. It looks like a child made it. It's like,
Just some like AI freak. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, what can I say? I'm just giving you my feedback as as a consumer of the CPS products. So
yeah. Well, this has been a hellish week of trying to get everything ready for this launch. It's been absolutely chaotic. But I will add remove disgusting beast to my long list of tasks that I have for the rest of the week.
good. Do you want to talk just a little bit for people who maybe don't know what this product is and what it's going to be about and what's happening, so we can fill them in rather than have this little like in private talk that nobody understands?
Soliciting plugs without me even telling you to do it. I love it.
Well, I'm actually curious myself because
Mm.
I have a general idea. I know it's an exploitative course, but
Yeah,
I'd
so,
like to know more
well,
details.
first off, the Grade E launch, like the course launching itself, isn't actually the reason that things are so chaotic. The reason that things are so chaotic is that Carrot Corner, which has up until this point been a site where customers log on, buy a course, click a download link, download a big zipped folder full of videos, unpack the videos, watch the videos in their own computer offline. Now it's changing to being like every other video site, that videos are on the site. You get a 2 minute preview or 3 minute preview if you haven't bought it, and every video is there in like a media library. And then when you buy a course, all of the videos of that course unlock and you get full length ones instead of previews. So it's basically like a modernized version. And it turns out that that particular aspect that my tech guy and myself and my assistant Beatrice have been working on for the last few weeks is littered with like random bugs and things going wrong and stuff like that. So that's kind of
Mm,
where a lot of my time is going. It's like supervising that, which is why I'm kind of stressed this week. Um,
mm,
Grade E itself is something I'm really excited about as well. And that is the exploitative part of the Carrot Poker School. We already have parts 1 through 3, grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. I think you've been working your way through the first two of those.
mm-hmm.
And then grade 3 is a mass data driven course. So basically, what we do in grade 3 is we take mass data, millions upon millions of hands of data fed into this program
You
called.
mean grade E, not grade
Did I
three.
say grade 3? Yeah,
Grade
grade
E.
E
Yeah,
is
yeah,
exploitative
yeah.
course where we take all of that data and feed it into this program called Hand to Note, which allows you to filter it in various ways and organize it in various ways and look at different stats and provide a complete roadmap to every common observable spot in the game tree, indicating where people are investing too much money, bluffing too much, folding too much, not folding enough, not bluffing enough. We rate the spots between what was meant to be 1 and 5, but then some spots with such extreme cases where people were like never bluffing or people were like
Mm-hmm.
insanely over bluffing that we actually extended the scale and the spots rated 6 and 7 and 8 and -2 and stuff like this. And these numbers, these ratings tell you how aggressive you need to be, like whether you need to overinvest or underinvest with your own range, like whether to fold all of your bluff catcher hands, or whether to call all of your bluff catcher hands, whether to bluff with all of your air in the river, or whether to only bluff with the best parts of it for bluffing in theory. And stuff like this. So it's kind of a bit of a cheat code. It's kind of like a roadmap to how real humans play and what you can do to exploit them in every spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we organize the data in like graphs and charts and stuff to distill it and make it really
Yeah.
accessible as well.
Nice. Nice. Well, I look forward to it. Um, is it going to be like if so like when I bought everything, I downloaded everything. So obviously that's not going to change. I'm still going to just like watch what I downloaded.
Yeah.
But in the future, things will just stream off the site.
Well, actually, we have demonic beasts with 9 hands that come to your house, go into your computer,
Perfect.
remove the content you
Great.
had downloaded so that you're forced to watch on the site.
Well, I have already taken preventative measures against that because I don't answer my front door when someone knocks. If you remember that.
I
That's
remember
one
that
of
you were
my rules
terrified
is that,
when the doorbell
yeah,
goes.
I don't see any point in answering the door at all. There's no reason to see anyone face to face in this day and age. I mean, I see people when I go out, but I don't like answering the door. Anyways, I'm not a weirdo. I'm not a shut-in, but
Sure.
and here's how you know I'm not a shut-in. I played live poker, and I
Yeah.
have a pretty funny story from the live poker streets.
Segue. So you sit in a room with no windows all day, around smelly old men that smell like warehouses, and you're not a shut-in.
No, because there's other people in the room, and
Not all of them smell like warehouses.
no. But most of the time the hygiene's fine, most of the time, but there are exceptions. But no, this was a story. This happened to me on Friday night at my normal card room. I'll preface it by saying I played after work, after my kind of day job, and I had gone between my day job and playing, I had gone to a happy hour. So I had um, a couple of drinks before I sat down to play. And with me, I'm realizing that like with poker, like if I've had a few drinks, I tend to be a little less filtered. I have like I lose that filter. I'll say something that maybe I would have kept to myself. And this was one of the situations where that really was like tossing a match into like a can of gasoline.
This isn't like a hugely powerful filter at the best of times either, let's face it. Like
it's not. You're right. The filter, yeah, when I'm totally sober, it's still very
it's like 2
yeah,
out
not
of 10.
it doesn't trap a lot.
Then it becomes like a 0.1 out of 10, probably.
So I sat down to this game, and there's a guy who plays pretty regularly. He's retired. He's what you would call, I think, the stereotypical kind of old man coffee. Not a lot of action. When he gets in the pot, he's doesn't like to fold. Kind of takes things very personally. Doesn't like people 3-betting him, things like that. So for all those reasons, he doesn't really like me. And I've learned now the extent to which he doesn't like me. So he was in a hand with someone else that I wasn't in this hand, and the guy shoved on the flop, and he called him with like a draw to, I think, just like 2 outs or something. It was just like a very, very thin, terrible call and a terrible spot. And he hit it on the river and hit it and made it straight and won like this huge pot. And as he's dragging the pot, I just said the first thing that came to my mind, which was, wow, how are you not broke right now? And what I meant by that was like, how are you not like, how do you have any chips left? Like that was just like a crazy call. And he was in the middle of dragging his chips, and he stops and he slams his hand on the table, and he looks at me and he goes, God damn you, you are so critical. You think you're so much better than everybody. You are like, I don't know what your problem is. I come here to have fun. Why can't you have fun? And started kind of ranting about how I'm like, I mean, it wasn't totally inaccurate, but he was just like very much like, you take things too seriously. You don't realize I'm having fun. Then he was like, I give action. Isn't that the point? Isn't that what players like you like? Someone that gives action? And I thought to myself, you don't give action at all, but whatever. And I'm just kind of listening to him, and I can see his face getting like, it was like literally red. And I'm like thinking, okay, how do I gauge my reaction to this? Because I didn't want to just sit there and let him just kind of berate me.
Yeah.
And so I just instinctively just said to him, you don't have to play at my table. Like you can always move to a different table. And here's where it was really funny. His reaction was, I was here first, god damn it. Which is a hilarious thing to say. And in the moment, I thought, okay, I should end this now because the longer this goes on, it's probably costing me EV. Like, I was getting a little embarrassed. Like, I thought it was kind of a bad look. And so I just was like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. I apologize. And I just tried to like, and then he was just like, it's so frustrating playing with you. It's just so frustrating. And then he was like, all right, I'm done now. I'm done. And he looks at the dealer and he goes, next hand, let's just move on. Like he had kind of victory, whatever. And so like what I took away from this was like, number one, the reaction of like, I was here first is such a funny thing to say because it's meaningless in poker, but it's this attitude of like what he's essentially saying to me is like, I sat down before you, so therefore I get to approve of everything that you say that is said at this table. Like I have ultimate veto authority.
I don't know if he meant that. I took it to mean, let me play devil's advocate here. Not that I'm taking his side, but I took it to mean you two are, at odds with one another. You suggested that maybe you shouldn't be at the same table, and he's saying, well, if we're not going to be, if I don't want to play with you, I shouldn't have to leave. You should have to leave because we've fallen out and I was here first. It's still like a bad argument, but I don't know if he was like wanting to call the shots
so.
on everything.
But I don't know what. So like I instinctively like my impulse is to try and solve things like without like appealing to authority or something. And so like I'm just like, look, there's an easy solution to this. Like you can, if it's such a problem for you to sit here, like you don't have to play with me. Like that's the nice thing about this room is there's multiple tables. Like we have options. And for him to be like, well, no, I was here first is just a strange thing to say.
No, it's not a valid thing to say at all.
Yeah. That was my point. And so I thought, okay, I don't know. It just seemed kind of a meaningless reaction to me, but it also was like very much like, I shouldn't have to inconvenience myself at all. Everyone should have to kind of, I should approve of everything. That's just how I perceived it in the moment. But after this kind of little exchange, I thought to myself, okay, well, I probably shouldn't have said anything. Number one, I was joking. I didn't mean to needle him. Like he won the pot, number one. And number two, it's like, I don't think it's needling that or like a bad needle to be like, we can both acknowledge that you made like a really thin call and you got paid in 90% of the time, like you're going to go broke there.
Yep.
Maybe if I had said, how do you have any chips left? That would have been better. Maybe the word broke implied he doesn't like it would have taken out his bankroll. I don't know, but he got very angry.
Yeah, he might be like kind of broke in real life, and that word like triggered his, I hate that word, but triggered his insecurities or whatever. No, I think
it was Go ahead.
I think had you said you should leave because I can't stand you and I don't want to be at this table with you, then maybe I was here first as like a more reasonable reaction. But you weren't really saying that. You were just saying, well,
no,
I'm here. If you don't like it, you don't have to sit at this table, but I'm happy at this table. I don't have a problem with you. If you want to
that's
leave,
what I meant. That's what I meant. I don't have a problem with him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So what this kind of thinking through it, later, I thought to myself, like there's these situations don't come up a lot, but if they do, and when they do, I think it's important to like be prepared for how to handle it because it could easily spiral out of control. And so when I say like when I was thinking to myself, this is costing me EV, it was because it was holding up the game. Number one. Number two is that it gives me like the edge that I have with someone like him is that he can't feel like he can beat me in pots. And so therefore he is frustrated, makes more mistakes to the extent that he's ever playing correctly at all, which he isn't. But the point is that like the advantage I have is like not being not being someone that like openly pisses him off. I guess I don't know. He seemed really angry that day, but it was it was funny in a sense because he was like so sensitive about it, and I'm generally not someone that like would ever I would ever get angry like that. So it's always very strange for me when that happens. But
Mm,
when it does, like I just tried to like I just felt like, okay, I need to like put an end to this as quickly as possible and
yeah.
move on.
Yeah. I think there's a phenomenon sometimes where because of alcohol, you're on a slightly different wavelength than you normally would be. And
Yeah.
maybe like your reaction just misjudges like the environment or how you would react when you were sober or whatever. You would just have that couple of
Mhm.
seconds to, as you say, not act on the thought as soon as it comes to mind, but
Right.
suppress it and deliberate over whether you want to say it or not. And I think that's why when people are drinking, they just fall out with people way more easily because they blurt out
Yeah.
whatever's on their mind. Like things like I have thoughts pretty often that if I said them out loud, would cause an argument with my partner. Like if I said them out loud, would really piss
Sure.
her off. So I
Sure.
try not to. And one time I was doing the hoovering, which to you would be vacuum cleaning.
The hoovering.
And yeah, it's called hoovering in the UK. Yeah, we use the 1458
That's
time. It's currently 1458, and it's time to hoover.
that's so funny.
It was a
That's
brand of
so like the
vacuum
brand
cleaner.
name is Hoover
Yeah, but we
Vacuums.
just use
So
it
you've
for
adopted the
everyone.
brand name.
Exactly, yeah. So if you
Huh.
said the vacuum cleaning here,
Yeah.
people would be like, no, cat. Can't nearly stop the recording there. People would be like, that's American. That sounds wrong. Like, why are you being American?
Interesting.
So anyway, I was doing the hoovering, and she was like, we'd had like a minor disagreement about something, and she'd left the room, and I thought she was like at the other side of the house, and I said something like, I don't know why you have to be such an entitled bitch or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but it was some sort of thing that I didn't want her to hear, but it was just a thought, and I
Mm-hmm.
just said it,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like, how am I being an entitled bitch? I was like, what? You're still
Mm.
like at the doorway? Shit, like you weren't meant to hear that. And it was obvious that she wasn't meant to hear it because I wasn't saying it to her. I was just saying it in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's weird because it's like someone's called me something, but they didn't want me to hear it. So they weren't like trying to
Mm-hmm.
upset me with it. They just had a genuine thought
Mm-hmm.
that was negative about me. And then it's like all you're doing is hearing somebody's thought. And it's like a whole different thing, right? Because it's not like
Yeah.
someone's stabbing at you viciously and trying to hurt you. It's just that they're upset with you and they've said it and they didn't know you could hear it. Almost makes it like even more real because like they didn't think you
Yeah.
could even hear it and they said it. It's like hearing that people have been
Yeah.
talking about you behind your back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like you don't know too, like the other thing that I forget with live poker is you don't know what people are bringing to the table, what kind of baggage, emotional baggage they have,
Yeah.
what kind of issues. And I think it's easy to forget that you are dealing with, there is money involved, and, people are losing money, people are winning money. There's big pots. It's not an environment that is like totally secure, I think. And I think the when that happens, it's a reminder of like of that. I think it was a reminder. This was a reminder of that for me, that this is a kind of sensitive environment, and that especially I think if you're a player who's perceived to be either like a winning player or someone who takes poker seriously. I think more so someone that takes poker seriously. I don't think it's necessarily like whether I'm like a winning or losing player,
Yeah.
but someone that like cares, someone that thinks through situations, someone that's not acting just impulsively, someone that maybe is not on the surface out to have like there to just have a good time, which I'm not. Um, I think that it creates a lot of it can create a lot of antagonism, and
Yeah.
people sometimes look for any excuse as soon as that excuse comes for them to kind of unload
Mhm.
all those issues, they take it. And
Yeah.
I never felt in any danger, any physical danger or anything. It was just more uncomfortable and
Yeah.
kind of
Definitely.
embarrassing, and kind of like I had just kind of stumbled on this hornet's nest. But what was funny about it is that a couple of the other players at the table literally were just like kind of, once things cooled down and moved on, like kind of said to me like, you know, that was really extreme. Like, I don't think that you really deserved that reaction,
Yeah.
like blah, blah, blah. But regardless, it happened. And I think I don't look back at it with any kind of like regret necessarily. I just look at it as like, it was a good lesson to learn. And especially for someone like me who is pretty much like a regular grinder, not someone that necessarily is looked at as like a really good time, maybe like to play with. Like people move tables often with me. I think it's something that I just have to be more aware of, that
Yeah,
I never really thought too much about before.
and it definitely brings us into this territory of like, don't tap on the aquarium, don't scare the whales off.
Yeah,
You gotta be nice to the whales. And there'll be
yeah,
Gregs listening to this right now, probably, who are thinking that's bad behavior because he's a VIP or whatever. You have to treat him
yeah,
well, even though he's a complete asshole. And you know my views on that. I absolutely hate that. Like, I
yeah,
think that, yes, you do want to be in good games and you shouldn't be abusive to fish for no reason or whatever. But if they're being horrible to you, like, I think it's a really, like, I think the cost of sitting there and letting them talk to you in a derogatory way or letting them behave in a completely like moronic way at the table just because they're bad at poker and you're profiting from it. I think you pay a deeper price there in the long run as a human by
yeah,
just like accepting that kind of behavior. So that's not really what happened here. What happened here is that you'd had a couple of drinks and you accidentally said something you would normally say. It wasn't really a
right,
terrible thing. But I think there are other
right,
situations where there's an absolute asshole at the table who's a whale behaving in a totally unacceptable way, and their regs just not even just putting up with it, but kind of like being nice back to try and make sure that this person stays. And
yeah,
that's the part where I get a bit like creeped out by the poker player, and I'm like,
hmm,
what are you? Who are you? What will
hmm,
you do for EV? Like, are you literally going to sit there and behave in a completely different way than you would normally because this person's someone you can make money from? And that's the part of the whole EV first, EV at all costs like mindset that I don't like. That
yeah,
gives me the creeps.
yeah. I mean, I think it's like how would you be in any kind of business setting?
Right,
I mean, you're nice to your customers,
right,
there's the customer is always right
yeah.
mentality, especially if you work in the service industry. But
Well, usually,
there's a limit to that.
yeah. There's a limit. They're usually right,
Yeah,
or
right.
or at least if they're wrong, you'll tell them respectfully that you think they're wrong. And like if they get a bit
Yeah.
angry, like say I'm coaching you and you start being a bit petulant. And this happens from time to time. A student's running bad. They don't like the fact that I've said this play's really bad that you've made because they've already like defended it in their own head and like built a little fortress
Hmm.
around it, and it means a lot to them that the play is good and they want validation. And I say, actually, the play's not good. You've lost a load of EV here. You've blundered here, and I say something like that when they're hoping I'm going to say that's a really good play, well done. It's not your fault that you lost.
Hmm.
And then they might say no, but I think blah blah blah. And in these games, like you don't play these games, and in these games, like he's just always got this or something, or like I should just do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll be like, okay, well, let me push back a bit here. I don't agree with you, and like is it like I'm gonna tell you why I don't agree with you. I'll say it that way.
Hmm.
But there
Hmm.
would come a point where if the student was like, you know what, man, like you're talking shit, like you need to move on, you need to let this go. I don't believe what you're saying, and I don't think you know what you're talking about. And like
Really? Wow.
this hasn't actually happened like recently.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
can
Okay.
recall one guy I worked with a few years ago that was like an absolute personality disorder, like for sure, and had alienated
Hmm.
other coaches. It
Hmm.
turned out had like worked with him and had to stop working with him because he was just absolutely horrible with every poker coach he
Okay.
employed. So like, I spoke to a couple of others about this guy. So there was one person that I'm pretty sure was psychologically damaged and had a personality disorder and was making its way around coaches, paying for coaching, falling out, and then asking for the money back. Like that's something that happened. Um,
Mm.
but in general, just hypothetically, if I had someone then start getting really abrasive and start getting like kind of like behaving in a derogatory, unacceptable way towards me, I don't give a shit. My reaction there is, I'm not going to work with you again. I'm going to refund you what's left of your coaching package. That's my
Hmm.
reaction. So if you ever want your money back from coaching and you want to terminate a coaching package, just be an asshole because like I'm going to give you your money back in that situation because I'm not going to work with someone who's like that. And I don't care that there's like X amount of money on the line because at the end of the day,
Hmm.
your integrity and like being spoken to respectfully at work is way more important than what your EV is. So
Hmm.
if there's a fish at the table who's literally just being a complete moron to the point where everything that comes out the person's mouth is just like painful to listen to and be around, then I would leave the table. I don't care. Like I'm not gonna sit there and like if it's like directed at me, I'm gonna either call the floor or challenge him or fight back or leave the table. I'm not gonna just accept it. It's like the other day, I don't know if I told you the story. An old putter waving man came up, red in the face, and started waving a putter in my face on the golf course.
Oh,
This
wow.
is telling me
Wow.
about how I shouldn't play from certain tees unless I'm playing in the competition. Or I just joined the golf club, so I didn't really know what this rule was about. And he was like furious. You don't play off the middle tees unless you're playing in the middle. And he had the putter in my face, and I was like, I don't really know how to react here because like
Yeah.
he doesn't. He seems to think that's totally justified. I was like, do I say
Yeah.
like, get
Yeah.
that fucking putter out of my face, so I'm gonna break it over your head, or do I just say, okay, or is there some in between? So I just kind of took the line of like, look, this is my first week in this golf club. I didn't know about that rule. That's fine. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
If I had a redo of it, I would have said something like, why are you waving your putter in my face? And that'd be the first
Yeah.
thing I would have said.
Yeah.
But I was too shocked to like find that
Yeah.
response right out of the gate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I think I think like getting back to, being nice to fish, the VIPs,
Mm.
etc. I think that there is a kind of there's a balance to be struck, and I think it's different for everyone. I don't think there's a necessarily a right way or a wrong way to do it. I think one of the things I struggle with, and I'm still figuring out, just because I still haven't really been playing seriously that long, is where that line is for me and what I'm willing to put up with and what I'm not. So
Mhm.
like in your example of like the coaching, you clearly have your red line of
Yep.
like, okay, if someone crosses us, it's over, we're
Yep.
done. Like,
Yep.
I don't care. Like you're getting your money back and we're done.
Yep.
I feel like for me, I have that generally. No one has yet to cross that with me. Like I've never really been treated so terribly by someone at the table, or have been around someone that's like, I've definitely been around a lot of obnoxious people. And if they are obnoxious and no action, then I definitely try and move to a different table and remove myself from the situation,
Mhm.
because I am impatient, and that can actually affect me. That can make me play worse.
Mhm.
Um, but I think one of the things I can always get better at, and that is probably a leak in my game, is that I don't like I don't I tend to be more I tend to have less of a filter, like you said. So like this was an example of like, okay, I had a few drinks, so like I really didn't have a filter in this situation. But even when I'm sober, sometimes I'll say things that are in my mind more of a joke and that I find to be funny, or just my natural personality that I think people may find annoying or hurtful or something like that. Like I don't realize that a lot of people are very sensitive
Mhm.
about how they play, and I think for me, because I have like a fair amount of confidence in how I play, and I know how much time I spend studying and
Mhm.
putting the work in off the table,
Yep.
so that when I get into a game, I know where I'm at and what's going on, and like the level that I'm thinking about is like the result of a lot of hard work.
Mhm.
I get When I encounter people who don't even put any work in at all and are just there completely recreationally, and they win a big pot off me or they get lucky or something like that, I don't berate people, but I definitely will say things like, wow, okay, I didn't expect you to have that,
Mhm.
or oh, that's weird, or this doesn't make any sense, and like just thinking out loud like that. And I think I noticed some other more regs in my room will do that too. And I definitely think it's something that I should stop. And I think it's something that probably is costing me EV in some sense. Even though these aren't private games and that, everyone can sit down. But I think in general, I'm like, I have a lot to improve there. And I think this was an example of like an extreme version of that. So
Mhm.
it wasn't like what happens every day. But I think do I have a red line in terms of what someone could say to me? I think sure I do, but I also have like a lot of I have a pretty high bar when it comes to like putting up with people. Like I can sit there and put up with them if I feel like it's worth it for me, and
Yeah,
I can make that
and
analysis in my own head.
that's a personal choice, right? Like it's subjective. So I didn't
Yeah.
mean to imply that there's like some concrete objective
No,
line
no,
for
I know.
everybody.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not. I know you know, but some I feel like the way I put it before, it may have sounded a bit like that to the audience. But yeah, I think like if you're happy, if the way someone's behaving is kind of obnoxious, but it's not really bothering you, and you think like they're like a really bad player and they make the game juicier, I don't think there's a problem with continuing to play on that table or whatever. Like I think that's fine. I think when you are feeling really shit about the way someone's behaving towards you, yet you still put EV before the way that's
Hmm.
making you feel, I think that's where your
Hmm.
priorities are messed up. And I think for some people,
Hmm.
they do get themselves into that situation in poker, but it's kind of a rare
Hmm.
thing that anyone goes that far,
Hmm.
right? It's not that
Yeah.
common.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think a good skill too is like being able to put up with people is like a really good skill as a live, especially as a live poker player. Like being like, I've seen this before. Like yesterday, I lost a big pot, and the guy was taking pictures of his chip stack
Mm-hmm.
right next to me with his phone, like right after.
Yeah.
Which is whatever. But yeah, things like that. It's just live poker, and I don't even live in a city like Vegas where it's like you have a lot of tourists and you have a lot of people coming through that are
Mm.
just truly, on vacation, truly on a kind of recreational mindset.
Yeah.
And, that has got to be like much worse than, me just playing in a kind of regular room.
Yeah. Like I've told the story before, probably about the Venetian once in Vegas, where the guy just stands up, sat at the other table, like the table next to mine, and like towers over this guy. He's in like the one seat, and he like towers over the guy in the two seat, and he's just like, "Your mother, your mother, your mother." And the guy in the two seats like, "I don't want to go back to jail, man. You better stop that shit, man. I want to go back to jail." And I'm just like, "Fucking hell, this is some
Yeah.
surreal shit right now that I'm watching."
Did you see the clip from I think it was the Big Bet poker stream, where those two guys literally were like threatening to kill each other, like kill each other's mother and stuff. Like it was just
Holy
like
shit!
it
No.
was it's so bad. Yeah, it's worth watching once, and
Mm,
by once, like only once,
mm,
because I think they took it offline. I saw it through like a YouTuber stream or something,
mm-hmm.
but it's pretty bad, and it's like way, way out of line for what even in like a very aggressive, you know, argument between two guys. This is
Yeah.
like, wow.
There's a dark side of every like game or sport or
Yeah.
whatever. Like the golf dark side is a miserable, grumpy old man
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
like so set in his ways that his brain is like fucking rusted metal where like no changes are possible, and he's so outraged by the slightest thing that doesn't fit that blueprint that he's now going to see you as a miscreant, troublemaker, hoodlum because you're
Yeah.
younger and didn't follow one rule, and he's going to wave a putter in
Yeah.
your face. That's like as bad as it gets in golf. In bridge, you get like a really condescending person that tries to make you feel shit and tries to make you feel stupid. And that's about as far as it goes. Or
Mhm.
someone who tries to be so eloquent and upper class that they try and make you feel like scum. That's the other thing you get in bridge, but it's not that
Mm.
bad. Poker has a way higher ceiling or lower floor, shall we say, as to how bad things can get because there's money being gambled and because poker attracts more vulnerable people and people with mental health issues by and large, in my opinion, than bridge or golf. That's not to say that there aren't people with mental health issues in those games, and it's not to say that
Mhm.
that many poker players have mental health issues. It's just a comparison
Mhm.
between the games, right? Um, and I think that's why at the poker table things can get like ridiculously out of hand on rare occasions when all of the chemical reactions are perfectly right and the pot just explodes instead of even boiling over.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely more possible in poker than other professions, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, anyways, I think that's enough of that, but I thought it was an interesting story to bring to it. It's not I don't think we probably shouldn't devote an entire episode to it, but it's
Well,
an
season two
interesting.
of Poker Distilled is very much au naturel. It's ranting,
Yeah.
it's chatting,
Yeah.
it's seeing what topics come up. So I'm cool with that. We didn't just talk about one old man coffee there. We talked about every old man coffee in the world, and everyone can relate to that
Yeah.
story, you know? So, like, that's something that everyone has
That's
seen.
good.
I have a story as well that I once sat in the Borgata in Atlantic City and played Stud to see what it would be like with six
Interesting.
old men. Like, I think the youngest one was like
Yeah.
78 or something.
Yeah.
And I'd been sat there for like 4 hands and nothing had happened, and it was so slow and it was such a terrible game, and they were all playing completely face up. And one goes, "Play a real man's game now, son." And I'm like, I don't fucking think I am, mate. I don't think I am going to go back to Hold'em now, which is not a great game. You know how I feel about No Limit Hold'em nine-handed live, but I was like,
Right, right,
this is
right.
fucking worse, though. This is much worse. Never sit at the stud table, boys and girls. Don't do it.
I've never played Stud live. There is in my room they do play Stud as like a bomb pot game. I don't know how exactly that works,
Yeah.
um but it's yeah, it's the pots get really big from what I hear. I mean, there's like, like is it five streets of betting in Stud?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. The pots get really big and nobody folds.
Yeah. Third,
So a lot
fourth,
of
fifth,
people a
sixth.
lot of people like it, but
Mm-hmm.
I've never played it.
Well, people are just probably unable to fold when they're getting good pot odds, even though they have like
Yeah.
0% equity. Like that's probably what's going on there. Like someone's bet into four people, they're never bluffing. Everybody calls, even though like two of the people are literally drawing dead, like in that spot or something. That's probably the way it goes. I played
Yeah.
a bit of 8 game online. At one point, I was like, I'm going to get good at 8 game. I'm going to master all 8 games. And, you know, it was
Yeah.
just like, it was really difficult because, like, a lot of the games are totally different to one another. And mixed games
Mm.
is like a whole new thing. But like I do think that getting good at mixed games and stuff like that,
Mm.
it teaches you some fundamental stuff about poker that you wouldn't necessarily learn just from playing like No Limit Hold'em all the time. So I think like the fact I played mixed games early in my career, the fact I used to play sit and goes, MTTs, heads up, I've played all these formats. It's definitely strengthened things because it gives you a broader outlook on how the game really works. So I'd recommend dabbling.
Did you play Limit Hold'em?
Yeah, so that's one of the 8 games in the eight
Yeah.
game rotation is Limit Hold'em. So played a
Is
bit
Limit
of it.
Hold'em,
Yes,
yeah.
it's not that dissimilar. Like I definitely felt at a big edge in a No Limit. Like when I played against 8 game players, I felt like I had
Mm.
an edge in Limit Hold'em. At PLO, I felt totally fine as well. Like once I got a little bit of
Mm.
a handle on how that worked, but playing stud high low, um, and 8 or better, Omaha 8 or better, I felt like really out of my depth in those games. I felt like
Mm.
they had a big edge on me. And then Deuce to Seven triple draw, I felt I was quite good at because I played a lot of 5 card draw back in the day, so I always felt that was
Mm.
one of the stronger ones. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but I felt like more comfortable
Mm.
there. And then there's Raz, which honestly just feels really formulaic to me. Like Raz feels, I'm sure there are close spots where it does matter what you do and it's easy to get it wrong, but Raz felt like the most solvable game, like the most sort of reducible
Mm.
game to just pure logical
Mm.
formula out of that rotation. But yeah, it's fun. Like
Mm.
I definitely think like if you have a
Yeah.
friend that wants to play heads up 8 game with you for a while, that's some really fucking pure poker right there. That's gonna do it good
Yeah.
for your game. That's like
Yeah, for
being a
sure.
being
I
a
can imagine.
boxer and just having a friend that you just like fight with all the time, like or something like that. It feels like you're kind of in the pure sort of
Yeah.
poker zone there, where
Pure
like
poker, yeah.
you don't have all of your rules to fall back on that you have in like because I'm a no limit like coach and
Right.
theoretician. I've spent so much time studying no limit. You know, I can give you books and books full of protocols for thought and how ranges work and be pretty accurate with it and all of that. But when you're playing like an 8 game rotation or something, you're playing games you never played before, you're literally using your poker mind to improvise on the spot. So it forces you to problem solve on the spot, which is a pretty cool skill
Mm.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's from what I hear is that there's like playing mixed game like in the World Series, for instance, like playing like a mixed game tournament. It's a smaller field. Like if you can get good at that, like you're gonna have a fairly big edge. Whereas like everyone plays no limit, so it's just like everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and it's and like the mixed games are there's more. I don't know, there's more edge to be gained by someone that's like really committed to studying and learning them
Mm-hmm.
to the extent that you can.
Yeah, probably. But then again, it
Yeah.
takes a long time to get up to speed. Like I've tried to get up to speed
Yeah.
in PLO. Like I've worked with Vision Trainer, which is like the tool over at Run It Once that Galfund developed. And it's
Yeah.
great. Like it makes you so much better at the game. But still, it's like so much work as a Hold'em player to transition into a new game. It's almost like you're taking up a completely different game altogether. Like you're taking up some computer game or
Yeah.
you're taking up some other sport. It's like, yes, it's poker, but not as you know it. It's almost like
Yeah.
even a really, really good Hold'em player playing PLO for the first time is going to make a ton of mistakes all over the place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We have there's 2 nights of PLO at my normal card room, and the games get pretty big. I've never played in them. I don't really ever, I've never really played PLO other than just like in bomb pots. But I feel like my focus is like so specific
Hmm.
to Hold'em, and I feel like I have so much more work to do. And
Yeah.
I don't know, like the thought of like even when I deviated a little bit from my normal study to like study more MTT strategy before the tournament I played last weekend, even that was like kind of, it was just tough because it's like you have to put yourself into a different mindset. And then like I remember like I played cash the night before I played the tournament, and I'd been studying like tournament MTT stuff all day and kind of the day before, and like my sense of like ranges were all screwed up. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
felt like I just had like a different sense of like, okay,
Yeah.
like under the gun is this and da da da.
And here's the thing,
And
right? Like the
yeah,
bigger the the deeper the well of skills you have and the knowledge you have in one
yeah,
format of the game, the safer it is to leave that format with that and go to another format without destroying the skills that you've built. So, for example,
interesting.
if you're a really strong no limit Hold'em player, you can go to PLO or tourneys or some other format or mixed games, learn that, come back to Hold'em, and because your pathways there, they're almost on a deeper level of your brain. The like really
Mm,
shallow ones you were digging in another game don't get messed up with them. Like the deep ones still flow. You
mm,
can still use those neural pathways without any disruption. But if you take a brand new Hold'em player and then make them learn PLO, it fucks up their Hold'em knowledge because it's not deeply ingrained. You're learning two things at the same level of depth.
right,
And then it really
right.
fucks you up. It's like in golf, if you're a bad golfer and you change your swing a few times and your grip, it fucks up your entire game, as I've found out. Whereas
Mm.
if you're like a good golfer, you can try something out for a while, decide it doesn't work, and then find that your old game is still intact more so when you go back.
Yeah,
I think that's a pattern with the human brain. I'm pretty sure it is. This is my
yeah.
complete armchair psychologist ranting here, but I'm pretty sure I've noticed that as a poker coach with students.
I think that's totally true for sure. And I feel like the just the more ingrained Hold'em theory becomes like, I don't know, it feels so foundational to me that like it'd be weird to say I'm going to start. I mean, I know maybe some older players did, but like start with stud and then learn no limit, or start with, more of a mixed game approach and then come to no limit. I mean, I'm sure there's players out there who have,
Mm.
but like I feel like Hold'em is like the foundation, the cement in your kind of poker home, and that being as solid as possible allows you to kind of build on that and come back to it. I just feel like I don't have that cement
Yeah.
totally. It's not totally dry yet for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning it, but even when like talking about like, getting back to this exploitative course and the idea of like exploitative play.
Which is out, by the way. I just realized that this is being released a week after the course actually comes out. So I'm talking about it as if it's not
Oh
out.
yeah.
It's out. You
Yeah,
can
you're
go to
right.
Carrot Corner right now and grab Grady of the Carrot
You're
Poker School
right.
along with all our other stuff. So just thought I'd mention that while we're on the topic. But go on.
Yeah, when people hear this, we'll be 7 days older than we are now.
Yeah, I don't want to be any older than I am now, but I guess it'll happen whether I like it or not. I'll be an old man coffee one day and I'll be like, God damn it, son, be a rock,
Yelling at the Zoomers.
You have ace king, son.
Yeah, yeah. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So like, deviating from theory requires like understanding what theory is,
Oh,
right?
so
Like you can't
much.
deviate.
Oh my God,
You
so
can't
much.
deviate from something you don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I was
And
just
so
saying
like,
this earlier to a student.
yeah.
Like it was a spot where he was button, he 3-bet the cutoff, and the flop was like 9-7-3 two tone. And the cutoff checked to him, and he bet small. And the cutoff raised fairly big, 100 big blind stacks. And he was like, well, I would just only call here. I'd only ever call here because I wouldn't want to blow out his bluffs and blah, blah, blah. And I don't see why I would raise. If he has Jack 10, it would be a gutter and 2 overs. I don't want to blow him off. I just want him to bluff off. And I was like, okay, well, how would you feel if I said, here are 3 reasons for jamming? 1, so this is gone, 3-bet pre, button cutoff, C-bet, raise. And now I'm saying, here's 3 reasons for jamming in position. 1, your pocket kings with none of the flush draw king. Like we didn't have the backdoor flush draw. They benefit a lot from fold equity. So when villain folds anything with an ace in it, Jack 10, a flush, like a flush draw, a terrible flush draw or something, that's a huge benefit. Not that people are really folding many flush draws there, but you can also get it in against weaker over pairs and be in good shape against jacks and 10s and flush draws and things like that. So you have like a big value element. And thirdly, you're just not risking that much money relative to the pot now. Like what you're actually putting in relative to this large pot isn't so bad that you've gone past the value investment ceiling for your hand. So your hand has enough equity to do that in Carrot Poker School value betting framework. So when he saw all of that, he was like, yeah, those reasons kind of make sense, but I still think I would call. Then I brought up the solver and I was like, look, let's see what it says. Oh, it's jamming a lot of the time here. It thinks it's fine to jam. For these reasons, what do you think? Now I was like, okay, yeah, cool. That's really like opened my eyes. I didn't realize jam was a play. And I was like, okay, do we stop there? He's like, what do you mean? Yeah, like that's the end. No, I was like, no, we don't stop there. What do we do with the fact that we've now solidified your understanding to the point where jam is now on the table? What we've done is we've taken jam and we've theoretically put it on the table. It's like, well, he's like, well, now, like I could exploit really easily now that I know that option isn't even bad in theory. I was like, exactly. So if you have an option that's fine in theory that you didn't know was fine in theory, I know this. I know he's listening to this as well. Shout out to you, Scott. This is literally an hour after our coaching session. And you can now say, oh, hey, this fish is probably too merged here. He probably has too many combos of flush draws, 10s, and jacks, and not enough combos of lower equity bluffs. I'm going to shove because that maximizes EV against both 10s, jacks, and a flush draw against most people. And that's really powerful. But you wouldn't have been able to even consider that line as an exploit if it's completely off the table to you in theory, if you don't realize it's a theoretical option. And that's why I'm always banging on about what are your theoretical options? Where is it optional to raise, to bet, to bluff, to value bet, whatever? And where is it mandatory and where is it prohibited? Because as you say, like if you don't know what theory is, how can you possibly formulate a good exploitative strategy? You can formulate a random strategy that might exploit one or two things, but if your baseline's way off, then, what's the point? You're not calibrated in the right way.
Right.
So any exploit is starting from an arbitrary start point, but it needs to start from 0 degrees.
Yeah. And I find too that as I become more versed in theory and more comfortable and knowledgeable of what theory is, like a lot of times, not a lot of times, but oftentimes the spots solve themselves in a sense, to where like you don't need to have some like super creative deviation or some, like generally, because at least in live cash games, people are so wide pre-flop, they're overcalling pre-flop, they're playing passively post-flop, that you're generally in a world that is either favorable for your range or unfavorable. And then based on that, you have, more specific, obviously like a more specific theoretical understanding of what's happening in a specific spot. But unless someone's like a total, like a very extreme player on one end of the spectrum, so like either a total whale or like actually like pretty good, then like you're going to be in a world where like theory is going to be pretty sufficient
Hmm.
in my opinion. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not always the case by any means. And there are times when I'm like, okay, this is a jam here in theory, but you know, I'm going to allow this person to blast off or whatever. But I don't know, like for the most part, like I don't find myself like deviating that too heavily. I will also caveat that by saying I have studied some of the old exploitative course that you had at Carrot Corner like a year and a half ago,
The
where
live
you
one.
were at the lectures, yeah, the live lectures that
So
you were
that's
giving. I have
actually
that.
what Grade E is. It's basically that,
Yeah.
but polished up and put into like a slick edited professional video production. But it's the same.
Okay.
It's the same course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Mhm.
So I have that version of which I still haven't gone through just because just had so much more basic stuff to learn.
Mhm.
So all of this is just a way of saying that like having like an understanding of theory gives you such a leg up
Yeah.
in so many ways,
Yep.
and makes you so much more comfortable in spots. I mean,
Yeah.
like especially like three bet. Like for the most part, like I'm three betting a lot, and the amount of the ways people react in when you're in like a post flop three bet world is just crazy. They're so not used to it, and they
Mhm.
don't behave rationally by any means. And so they're overcalling, or they're like, I got to put it in. I've already committed X amount of chips and da
Yep.
da da. And that world, if you can get someone into that three bet world
Right.
where they are uncomfortable, you are just I mean, I just feel like I'm just totally in control there, where
Right.
I'm just kind of pulling strings.
Yeah, I love three bet
Um,
pots against fish. So like when a
yeah,
fish opens, I'm always saying to my students, just three bet. Like you're on the
yeah,
button, you have 10-9 suited, and your solver says you can call or you can three bet, but you really want this fish to yourself, and moreover, you're not going to get four bet enough to ruin your EV. So if you
right,
get four bet, your
right,
EV's stone dead at zero, whatever you
right,
do. But it's not
right.
going to happen enough, and then they're going to call, and they're going to go into what we call low SPR madness, where a fish is
Mm-hmm,
kind of like there's blood in the water, i.e., too much of their stack is in the middle, and they become
mm-hmm,
crazed like a rabid dog, and they now need to do whatever they can to like protect the little babies they've put out there into the pot, and they're going to do irrational things like jam for 3x pot with a
right,
completely merged range just because they have an
right,
excuse hand. An excuse hand can just be like top pair bad kicker or second pair top kicker or a draw. It could be anything.
right,
So then you see people jam the flop over your C bet for 80 big blinds with top pair bad kicker, and you snap it off with an overpair. And
yeah,
had you kept the pot smaller, they'd probably call two streets and fold the river or something like that because they're in their comfort zone, or they might do that. But yeah, I
right,
agree. I think like making pots bigger pre-flop against bad players who are used to playing a limp call and
mm-hmm,
open strategy and stuff and
mm-hmm,
stuff like that, and also open a sizing that's so big that nobody really three bets them very often.
right.
But just three betting them a bit, making a small three bet a lot lighter to isolate those players, that's a hugely profitable thing to do. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And then when you actually have a good hand, like a decent enough hand, like where I mean, I'm always three betting with, I think, the right hands, but in terms of like save pocket kings or
Yeah.
something, they're so inelastic that you
Right.
could three bet 4x or
Yep.
something like that. I mean, they're not even going to be aware of it. They're going to just say like, okay, like I have to call here. And that's another, yeah, it's just so true. And you mentioned that example of like a fish jamming in, a big three bet pot. That exact thing happened to me last week in a huge pot, and I like 8-9 of spades and in the small blind, and like I ended up it was top pair. I had a nine, and I bet out, and this guy just jams, and I called him off, and he had like pocket sixes or something
Yeah.
like, and it was just it's yeah. So it's
People get restless, right? They get like, I'm
yeah,
feeling stressed. There's cortisol flowing through my brain. There's adrenaline, and the combination of cortisol and adrenaline is going to create fight tilt. Basically, when you have those two things going on at the same time, you want to fight, right? So then,
and they forget. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt,
no, that's
but
fine. Go.
they forget that fold is an option. That's the other thing too. You can just see it leave their head
Yeah,
that like fold is an option. Like, oh no, I've committed too much.
yeah.
I'm in it now. I gotta fight. I gotta fight.
To them, it's not an option because they're in a a biological state where fold is impossible. So it depends how you want to see this. Well, it depends how we're going to interpret this, because I'll put a theory to you, and you can tell me what you think about that, hey? Well, let's say that they're in that state, man, and the fold just, it's plain not an option. It's not that they can't access it, but it's just not there, huh?
I will give a quick, now that you brought up Peterson, which is we have to do it once an episode.
Yeah, of course.
I will give a quick plug to I don't listen to his podcast like a ton because sometimes it's a little bit too political and a little too angry for me. But the episode he had last week where he interviewed a woman, I think her name was Dr. Langer.
Yep.
She's a psychologist.
Phenomenal lady.
Episode. Did you listen to that? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so good. Wasn't it so good?
It was good.
But she talks about like reframing like situations, and oh my God, I was going to recommend that to you because I thought this is like a perfect poker player type. Like I feel like every poker player should listen to that. Well, maybe not everyone, not the ones that I play against, because I don't want to give you any kind of an advantage. But no, I think it's really good, and that's so cool. I'm glad that you heard that.
Yeah, no, it was really good, and she talks a lot about how, I think, like, to be fair, I felt like she went too far at certain points, and I felt like she transcended logic in certain ways that I wasn't comfortable with at all. But definitely some of the stuff she was talking about, and she's researched mindfulness for many, many, many years. She was like the big mindfulness person at Harvard, like back in the day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she knows her stuff. And the idea is just to, like, I can't possibly do this justice in like one sentence, but just to like very vaguely and badly sum it up. The idea was like, if you can just realize that things don't have to be as you've been taught that they are, or that you're like, you've taught yourself that they are, that you've got into the habit of believing that they are, or seeing the world in a certain way, if you can just snap out of that for 1 second in one small way, like a little wake up, like pinching yourself in a dream, you can access perspectives that were out of reach for you previously. So in the case of like the fish, and it doesn't have to be a fish, loads of my students do this as well, lots of aspiring players and regs do this too. They feel too pot committed, they feel like their chips need to be reclaimed, they feel like they can't just let go of a pot, and folding is legitimately not an option in that brain state. But if you can wake yourself up out of that and say something like, well, how bad would it be if I lost this pot? Would it be, another thing she says in that interview is, would it be a catastrophe or would it be an inconvenience? And she says that 99 things out of 100 or something like that, I'm paraphrasing here, are inconveniences, not tragedies. That's the word she uses. So if you're in a hand, I remember listening to that and thinking, that's a cool thing for coaching. What if I say to a student, okay, losing this pot, how does that feel? Oh, it feels terrible. Okay, is that tragedy or is it inconvenience if you lose this pot? Like, just starting there and getting people to see that, like, yeah, if I lose this pot, it's inconvenient. It's not what I want to happen, but it's not going to fucking affect anything in the grand scheme of things whatsoever. So how about I actually do myself proud and make the right play here and at least put fold emotionally and psychologically on the table? Like, let's get into a brain state. If we're going to be a type identity theorist about the brain, which is to say that, I want to do Peterson twice again here because it sounds like something you'd say, which is to say that mental states are type identical with physical biological brain states, then we could actually see the world in a way where when you feel really, really pot committed and the blinkers are on and the fold button doesn't exist, you're actually in some biological state that makes folding impossible, and you have to find the switch somewhere in your brain to switch into a different state to make folding permissible, or at least put the button on the screen for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. And I think the opposite is true as well. Like, you have to have the call. You have to be able to call, and you have to be able to say, I don't know if I'm right, or if this is going to work, or if I'm going to win this, but I'm okay with whatever result happens. And if I lose this pot because I called and I have it, then it's not the end of the world. It's not a tragedy. For sure. And also one more thing, and when you talk about like snapping yourself out of that kind of, what is the term she uses? Like mindlessness.
Yeah.
So snapping yourself out of mindlessness. So like this, I'm guilty of this 100%. I have, we'll use the example of a 3-bet pot, I have a strong holding and the flop comes 8, 9, 10, something like that. Or the flop comes, two-tone with a flush draw. And I'm like, okay. And then fish out of position blasts out. you know, something like that. Well, that at first blush, that feels like fortune reversal spot, but it may not be, and it may require like a real investment of and a real risk and a real understanding of like what to do in theory, but also like having that exploitable deviation because that flop is so wet and it's so specific, and this guy's blasting out. I'm using this example because this happened to me last night, and I feel like sometimes the easy mindlessness thing is to say this board's too wet, you know, my overpair is just totally just the equity is just been sucked right out, you know,
Or go
but
even further and say they never bluff or something like that.
Right.
Like use one of these overgeneralized reads. Like people are always doing that, right? Like they're not engaging with with like the actual texture, the actual action sequence, the actual positions. They're just being like, oh, fish don't bluff all the time. And there's loads of spots that fish bluff way too much in.
Exactly. Or just like, oh, this is I haven't seen him do anything all day, and you know, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Or like, this is bad for my range. Like, and just ending there. It's like it's really good for the caller's range, but not bad. Or it's really good for the pre-flop caller range and not good for my range. Like all of that. Like, and it's a really crappy feeling to be like to fold in a spot without having gone through that thought process and then say, well, let me go look to see what a solver says. And the solver's like, oh, well, okay, what you did was maybe okay, or you didn't lose a ton of EV, but then you know in your heart, no, the exploitative factor was enormous there, and you just totally ignored that. You totally ignored the deviation. So it doesn't matter what a solver tells you. Like there's no soothing way to, like, nothing's going to make you feel better because you ignored that deviation.
You will suffer, and you will feel guilty, and you will feel bad, and you will feel unworthy. Poker will always make you wonder if you're unworthy.
You don't deserve to play the game.
You don't deserve to play the game. Anyway, on that note, I better go because I have to have a quick call with my tech guy and try and get this launch ready. Remember, guys, Grady will be at a button click for you by the time this comes out, so you can grab it at carrotcorner.com.
I have to go do some hoovering.
You have to do the hoovering. Yep, which is
hoovering, yeah.
Probably what that old man coffee thinks you do all day, to be honest.
In high heels. Yeah. Well, yeah. He's wrong.
Yeah.
Anyways. All right.
Thanks, just in case he's watching, you're wrong and you don't deserve to play the game. OMC. All right, guys. Yeah, this has been a good one. Don't forget to rate us on Spotify. Let us know what you think on YouTube comment section as well about the off-the-cuff kind of conversations that we're having these days. We aren't really planning much, so do let us know if you like it or dislike it or whatever. But we'll keep these coming at you thick and fast. Poker Distilled. Oh, no episode next week. I am on holiday. Melissa, I forgot to tell you about that, so I'm literally telling you at the same time as the audience. I'm in Spain next week, so that's notice for you.
That'll be nice. That sounds fun.
That'd be good. I'll get some sunshine. But I should have told you that before. I think a week's notice is like semi-unprofessional here, so my bad.
It's okay.
We started the last episode with you being mad at me, so let's end this episode in the same way.
I wasn't mad at you. You described the last episode as having a falling out. It's
like all clicks and block capitals and YouTube algorithms. You know the modern world, Melissa. I don't have to explain it to you.
That's true. I do.
Okay.
All right.
We'll see you next time, guys. On Poker Distilled.
Bye.
Okay.